Bob, I don't think there's anyone doing as much, practically speaking, in ensuring certainly that the voting rolls are clean, other than Judicial Watch. Over 2 million names removed from the rolls that we've had verified just in the last year, a little bit over a year. We've had verified as a result of our litigations and such. It really is remarkable, and I know I say that because it's Judicial Watch, I'm supposed to say that, but certainly by any objective measure, to have one group responsible for cleaning up all those rolls is something that is obviously a credit to Judicial Watch and its supporters, and really an indictment of the Justice Department. But how did we get these numbers to where they are?
Sure, it's something we take great pride in. It is something we're doing almost alone in the country, and it shouldn't be that way. Over the past 4 years, we have caused about 2 million, more than 2 million voter registrations to be removed from the voter rolls immediately because they are outdated, and they're recognized as outdated. Another 2 million registrations have started the process of being removed, where they get official notifications and there's a whole federal process.
So the likelihood is all those names will be removed too, or most of those names will be removed, like 95% plus.
Correct. Yeah. 75 to 95% is our experience.
Yeah.
So that means something like 4 million registrations have been affected by our efforts in the past 4 years. Now, in November 2022, there are 110 million total ballots cast in the whole country. So 4 million is a lot. And we know that if we hadn't done what we've done, all of those registrations would be sitting undisturbed on voter rolls throughout the country.
So how is it we go about this process? I know, but I want you to explain it to our viewers here. It's the National Voter Registration Act, which is a federal law, and it's really quite simple, right?
It is simple.
In the sense of what the requirements are.
Once you understand what's going on, it is simple, in fact. What happens is that, of course, if someone dies, they need to be removed from the rolls immediately. That's part of the federal statute.
And that's state law requirement too, isn't
it? Common sense.
Yeah.
And if someone is barred by a disqualifying felony, and there are a few other circumstances, they need to be removed. But by far the biggest category of people who need to be removed from many states' voter rolls are people who've moved elsewhere. And usually they move elsewhere without telling the state. If they tell the state, that's fine.
So all those New Yorkers fleeing to Florida are supposed to be removed.
Right, or let's put it this way. All those New Yorkers who go to Colorado and stay there for a couple of weeks and happen to register to vote and then leave, their names need to be removed. All those people who have a house in Florida but vote in New York, if they have registered for one reason or another in Florida, their names need to be removed. If you moved out of state 10 years ago, 15 years ago, your name needs to be removed from the voter rolls.
So it's kind of tough. Let's say someone moves away in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. It's the government being the government. They have a little wiggle room, right? How does that wiggle room work?
Well, by federal law, they have a lot of wiggle room in terms of the time it takes to remove somebody. What happens is that the state suspects that they've moved, comes to believe that they've moved, and it sends them a federal notice letter. And all the notice letter says is, have you moved? Are we correct?
You didn't vote last time. Right. Where are you? We're worried.
Whatever reason they choose to send that letter is fine.
Yeah.
There's no federal restrictions. Once it gets sent, of course, if there's a response saying, no, we're here, that's the end of it.
Or if they vote.
And
that's like, so let's say I don't vote in the federal election in 2020.
Well,
what is the time frame before someone can actually remove me from the rolls, assuming they don't know where I am?
That part of the process is after the letter is sent.
But so I get the letter, I don't vote, they send the letter, you didn't vote last election. Are you still living where you are? Do you want to remain registered?
Right.
Let's say I ignore that letter, or I don't see it or respond. And then what else has to happen before I'm removed?
2 general federal elections. General elections, so not primaries, and federal elections have to transpire. And at that point, the federal law requires that that registration be removed from the rolls. So 2 general federal elections, if you think about it, can be almost 4 years or a little over 2 years. It's in that window.
Yeah, or as many as 5 years, practically speaking, if the timing's right, in terms of the letter going out quickly
Well,
enough.
you start to include the letter, and yes,
Yeah.
it is a process that takes years.
So why on earth would our enemies on the left, because it's usually the left that opposes these efforts to take, and it's not a perfect, the rules don't have to be perfect, but you got to take these reasonable steps as you're describing, object to waiting 4 to 5 years, as many as 5 years before someone is removed from the rolls due to inactivity.
I can't give you an insight into why. There's no possible reason. This statute has been around for 30 years now. This is the 30th anniversary of this statute being adopted. It was part of the motor voter law. It provides
So that was passed during, the Clinton years.
administration, and it's called the motor voter law because it specified that you can register to vote at the Department of Motor Vehicles. But the other part of that bill was that while we will have more registrations at the Department of Motor Vehicles, we will take efforts to make sure that everyone who's on the roll is supposed to be there.
So that's the nice way of putting it. But Democrats wanted to pass the bill. Conservatives and Republicans objected because they thought everybody and their mother was going to be registered 2 or 3 times every time they showed up at a DMV or a welfare office or collected a check or had another interaction with the government. And supposedly the deal was, oh, don't worry, we'll require steps to clean up the rolls. Well, how did the law end up getting enforced practically once the left got what they wanted?
Well, there are 2 sets of people who can enforce the bill. One is private people like ourselves,
Right.
who are aggrieved by violations of the law. The second group, really the first group, the one that you ought to go to first, is the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is empowered to enforce this law in all the states where it applies. And it ought to be doing so, and it's not.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.